क्लियर वे में आपके सामने रखता हूँ। फर्स्ट चीज़ जो यहाँ पे मुझे कहना है ये है कि आई एम ट्रेन्ड एज अ सोशियोलॉजिस्ट इन जनरल एंड a political sociologist in particular because my PhD was on resident welfare associations, politics, and so on and so forth. And of course, I have nothing to do with stamps as such, and census for sure, because you cannot do sociology without getting into data. अब ऐसा है कि an event like this helps us as academics to push the bar and try to talk to others as to what we could not see up till now. Now, the moment I talk about stamps, what comes to my mind, it used to come always, was देखो एक डाकिया आया, थैला एक हाथ में लाया, चिट्ठी कई हाथों में पकड़े, पहने हैं वो खाकी कपड़े, बांट रहा घर घर में चिट्ठी, मुझे भी दो लाकर चिट्ठी. And that was all what I had in my mind when it was about stamps. But this poem is very indicative of two things at the end. मेरे भी दो मुझे भी दो लाकर चिट्ठी. So that immediately tells us as to how the post office or the stamp, the Department of Post and Telegraph constitute for us as the everyday man a sense of assurance. वो हमें एक तरह का आश्वासन देता है कि स्टेट अभी भी मौजूद है, and we are all, you know, we are all desirous of a certain kind of an acceptance from the state. For example, I still remember when I was appointed at Lucknow University, I got an email and I was informed by a phone call, but I was still dying for that piece of paper which the postman or the courier should come and give me, which was said that the state still exists. And that is where scholars like Veena Das talk about the signature of the state. The piece of paper that we get is nothing but a signature to the state, and that the state very much exists. Why that is important for us in today's discussion, this idea that the signature of the state to a document is important, is because the census is done through two ways. My call here is, it is an event. Of course, the census is an event, and it happens, it comes, and it goes. But the point is that the census as a spectacular event and the census as a performative event. And this is my call on the topic, that what Vikas has very assiduously and very meticulously drawn, exhibition where he has made a collage of the, stamps and the way he's tried to address a point. You can get it very well, because I think I also read Vikas's piece in the front line of October 2025. Without getting the risk of repetition of what Vikas has already got, I'll just try to highlight on certain points where we can see, and because I think Vikas's, reflections on the journey of the census through the stamps is that how the census has been a very spectacular event. Yes, it was a spectacular event because in sociology जब हम पढ़ते हैं तो एक बहुत interesting work था Nicholas Dirks का. So Nick Dirks in his work Caste of the Mind says that in the 1871 when the census first started, the British tried to implant caste within our minds. It's not that the caste was ever there, or maybe it was there as a varna, as a classification of division of labor. The enumeration of caste was the first time where casteism or ethnicization of caste was put into the mind. So a very trivial, a seemingly innocuous act कि बस आपका कास्ट ही तो पूछ रहे हैं और क्या ही हम कर रहे हैं, नहीं आप इससे बहुत ज़्यादा कुछ कर रहे हैं जो बाद में पता चलता है. And this is what Nick Dirks had pointed out in his work Caste of the Mind. It first came as a paper in 1991, then he brought a full-fledged book in 2001, and the work was the same, Caste of the Mind. And that Caste of the Mind then comes back in 1950s when India started preparing for the census, very much aware that the caste is not all about, that the census is not all about caste. So they started a preparation in 1948 for a census which was done in 1951. So hence showing that the census has to be prepared, it is not an overnight event. Then in 1951, they used the Department of Post for advertisement, for messages, and the mark that they used was a pictorial auxiliary postmark. This is all what Vikas says, and I draw from Vikas's work, that it is a pictorial, just a mark on a postcard. It was not a stamp as say. And that mark then changes from Hindi to English, both bilingual in 1961, hence telling us that India has come of age, and it is saying that in order to reach the masses, you can't keep it only English, and we have to, that people like me also have to switch to bilingual mode अगर हमें ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा जनता के पास पहुँचना है, और हमें ये समझाना है कि सेंसस महज एक घटना नहीं है जो कि आएगा और जाएगा, ये आपसे जुड़ी गेट योरसेल्फ, आपसे जुड़ी हर बात के ऊपर वो एक तरह का रिफ्लेक्शन देता है. गेट योरसेल्फ एंड ऑल द फैमिली काउंटेड. इट वाज टिल 1961 वेयर इट वाज still then seen as a spectacular event for demographic data collection. It seemed that is the message that they brought out was that. 1971 comes and 30 lakh commemorative postage stamps are brought out, and those are dedicated to the enumerators, not to the people. So hence telling that the silent labor that goes behind it with the dakia and the others, or the dakia, the neo-dakias or the enumerators who also have a bag and they have a piece of paper, and we are all zealous to get our numbers to be counted and to be recorded because we want our reality to be put into the numbers, because the numbers then becomes reification of social facts. Now, the question is that in 2001, we are like post-liberalization India, this is the first census, and then they come with a change of slogan. Development as milestone of census, mirror of the nation's census. Now here we feel that the Department of Post, or the stamps, we are actually giving a message that we don't want to do the census just because we know who comes from which caste or how many children you have in your family. We want to do it much more than that. We want to do development planning based on this. So this so-called census as a spectacular event then gradually goes into the second phase, which I call as census as a performative event. And the details of this comes up in the details of the 2027 census. So very quickly some facts how it has become a performative event. Mind you, they are using 30 lakh enumerators. Then there are two phases in the upcoming census, where there is a house listing phase which will go on from March 1st and 30 of the preceding year. So you list your houses and then you do a population enumeration after that, which goes for 20-21 days in the next year. But what is more interesting for me are two things. How the performatives are better than the spectacle, because number one, they're using GPS integration. So when the moment you're putting the data in, it is mapped not with a map but actually with the GPS mobile tracking system, and also there is a coding of your qualitative data. So the analysis does not go haywire. And very interestingly, I was comparing the last election census report at the schedule and the upcoming one schedule, and I find a very interesting difference. And this is something as a sociologist even we feel it important. I remember, and this is where these are my closing remarks on the subject, is that they say that the moment you go and start asking people, "Aap kahan se hai? Aapki jaat kya hai? Aap kaun se caste se aate hain?" Now this is very unnerving, and this is something which was there in the initial questions of 2011 census: name, sex, date of birth, current marital status, age of marriage, religion. Now what this census does is something different. The sequence goes something like this: which house do you stay? What is the quality of your house? Who is the name of the head of the household? And then they come to sex and your SC/ST status. And then they immediately go to something else, which is about whether you own a pakka house or not, what is the light that you use, the type of lane, whether you use a radio or not, whether you have a television or not, whether you have access to the internet, the laptop. These were never there in the before. So I think the message that the government, we can always do the smart guesswork. I don't know how long the government agrees to that or not. But the government here is giving us a message that we wouldn't take people on the basis of their identity, whether they have this caste or that caste only, but we will not let it aside as well, because after 1931, mind you, they're revisiting the caste census for reasons we all can understand, because it will have a lot of call on the political economy of development, the kind of policies will be drafted, किस group को target किया जाएगा, कौन से लोग benefit लोगे, लेकिन उसके साथ वो जो ये दिखाने की कोशिश ये कर रहे हैं इस census के through, which I guess is, and what the Postage Department does is draws my attention and your attention to the census more clearly, and what the census does is what the census does, is that we would not take up people only by their assessment of whether they are poor or rich, or whether they are, whether they are coming from certain caste. So this victim card thing might not be able to be played, because then you will have your status about how much television and how much bicycle and how much car you have. So your consumption, your consumerism will be added to your identity questions, and then you cannot just say that we want welfare benefits or we want goodies for so on and so forth. But this entire process is also important for us, because it raises questions about the next part of the story, which is about to come soon. It is about the delimitation of constituencies, as to how much targeted vote banks we have, and the federal finances, the way it will be then shifted under the Finance Commission. More of it will be by the political scientist next in queue. But as a sociologist, I would like to say, I would like to sum up my remarks here that the census, of course, has been a spectacular event, but it is a performative event as well. And events like that of Professor Vikas Kumar's exhibition help us understand that the message is, the medium is as important as the message. And in this era of internet and digitalization of life, we still have a soft corner for the paper in hand, because that's the signature of the state, as we Nadak would call.